Welcome to day 27 of positioning ourselves for our best year yet and unlocking the keys to our success. And if you've been enjoying this journey thus far, all I ask is two things. One, go ahead and press subscribe. And two, share this message with someone else. And today, we're going to be discussing the keys to abundance and mastering our finances. Because God is a God of abundance, and He wants you and I to have more than enough. God desires for you and I to be blessed in our finances. In Scripture, it says, and God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, in everything, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. And it also says in Proverbs 10 and 22, the blessings of the Lord makes a person rich, and He adds no sorrow with it. So He can make you and I rich in blessings, but He can also bless us in our finances, and He adds no sorrow to it. And God dropped this in my spirit. He says, I give you all that you need, but you're responsible to manage it. Can I trust you to manage it well? And how are you currently managing what's presently in your hand? So God has entrusted each of us with things already. But the question is, how are we managing the things that we're already responsible for? He then goes on to ask me, do you trust me in your finances? And if you put me first, I will make a way. But your ability to steward and to manage what I've given you is also critical to your breakthrough and your abundance. And when we talk about the word steward or stewardship, it's defined as the responsible use of resources, especially money, time, and talents in the service of God. And when we think about stewardship, we think about the word management and managing things well, managing the things that we are entrusted with. And when we steward and manage well, He will give us even more. The word says, if you are faithful in little things, you will be faithful in large ones. But if you are dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. And if you are untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with the true riches of heaven? And if you are not faithful with other people's things, why should you be trusted with the things of your own? So here's 5 things to keep in mind when we talk about stewarding well and managing our finances well. The very first thing that we have to do is we have to start paying attention to what we already have, to cherish it and to value it, and to know where our money is going and how we're currently spending it. And we do so by creating a budget and then making sure that we are reviewing that budget on a consistent basis. So whether that's weekly, semi-monthly, or at least once a month, making sure that we're also taking time out to review the budget. And a budget is important because a budget brings discipline to our finances, and it helps us to stay on track and better manage our money. A budget also positions you so that you have something left over at the end of the day, end of the week, end of the month, however you want to slice it, you have something left over. And a budget helps you and I to create and to achieve our financial goals. So if this year is going to be the best year yet in our finances, step 1 is we have to start making sure that we are paying attention to how we're presently spending and managing our money. And we start by creating ourselves a budget. Number 2, a budget positions us to be able to create an inheritance. And God calls us to leave an inheritance to our children's children. Not just our children, but our grandchildren. In Proverbs 13:22, it says, a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children. So a budget allows us to be able to put aside money not only for expenses, but also put aside money so that we can begin paying ourselves. So the first step in saving is to put something aside. And that's also the first step of paying yourself. Because at the end of the month, if you say you've paid all your bills and you have nothing left over, then you have not paid yourself. You paid everybody else. You paid Honda, Toyota, you paid AT&T, you paid everything else. But what have you set aside for you and your family and your future? So we want to get into the habit of being able to pay ourselves first and then pay everybody else. And so getting to the point where we can pay ourselves first is the first step of savings. Now, if we're not at the point of being able to pay ourselves and then be able to pay everybody else, then that means that this year we've got to look to make some adjustments in our finances so that we have enough money to pay our own last name before we pay the last name of some designer brand or mortgage company, rent company, so on and so forth. You got to start putting money in your own pocket. So as we start paying ourselves and we start saving and setting aside money, then a portion of that needs to go towards investments, things that ultimately will make your money make money for you, things that are going to generate what's called a return on interest. So that means that you don't have to do all of the work. It does the work for you. So if you and I go to a job every day and we go clock in, we spend 8 hours there, then we're getting paid for our manual time there, performing certain responsibilities. But we want to get to a point where our money is making money for us. And we do that by being able to invest into different tools and vehicles that allow our money to make money for us. And there's a parable in Matthew that kind of talks about this. And it says, again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. He then left on his trip. The servant who received the 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earned 5 more. The servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received the 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. After a long time, their master returned from his trip and called them to give an account of how they had used his money. The servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 5 more. The master was full of praise. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. So the person that had 5 invested it, doubled it, and the master was well pleased and gave him even more responsibility. Then it goes on to say, let's celebrate together. The servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I earned 2 more. The master said, well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. So even the person that had two invested it and doubled it, and the master said, well done, and was given more responsibility. Now let's check out what the third person did. Then the servant with the one bag of silver came and said, Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here is your money back. But the master replied, You wicked and lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it. Then he ordered, Take the money from this servant and give it to the one with 10 bags of silver. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But those who do nothing, even what little they have, will be taken away. So again, our ability to master what's in our hand and the power and the responsibility of being able to take what we've been given and invest it so that it can ultimately grow. And I'm not just talking about in our finances, but that's one area, but also with our gifts, our talents, our abilities, the things that he blesses us with, our abilities, being able to take that gift and invest into that gift. And from there, using your gift well, mastering your gift. And when you do that, you will be blessed with even more. And so as believers, as we talk about investing when it comes to our finances, there are different tools and vehicles that we should ultimately educate ourselves on to become more knowledgeable about, so that we can make sure that our finances are also growing. Because again, in the text it says, at least deposit it in a bank. At least I would have gotten some interest, even though depositing money into a bank is not necessarily always the best vehicle to generate the greatest rate of return, but it's a starting point. Honestly speaking, I believe that every believer should invest in the investment tool of life insurance, because it's guaranteed that you and I are going to die someday or one day. And when we do, it gives us the ability to be able to leave an inheritance that's guaranteed to our loved ones. Now, that's not the only investment tool and vehicle, but it's one that I feel every believer should have, because what is guaranteed is that one day we're all going to leave this earth. The third thing that we want to keep in mind when it comes to managing our finances and being great stewards is to pay your tithes and start paying yourself first. And so when we get into the habit of paying our tithes, that means our first 10% of every dollar that we earn goes to God. In Malachi 3:8-10, it says, Should people cheat God? Yet you have cheated me. But you ask, What do you mean? When did we ever cheat you? You have cheated me of the tithes and the offerings due to me. You are under a curse, for your whole nation has been cheating me. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, so there will be enough food in my temple. If you do, says the Lord of heaven's armies, I will open the windows of heaven for you. I will pour out a blessing so great that you won't have enough room to take it in and to receive it. Try it and put me to the test. God calls us to try him out, to put him to the test. See that he will deliver on his promises. If you are faithful in your tithing, then he will be faithful in abundantly blessing you and giving you more than enough than you have room to even receive. So again, first 10% that we get should go to the tithe. And here's a guide on how to help us best spend the remaining 90%. So the first 10% is going to go towards your tithes. The next 20%, you want to start getting into the habit of paying yourself. So you want to spend the next 20% towards savings and investments. The next 60%, ideally, is what we should be utilizing for our operating cost. So our living expenses. So what our living expenses are, that's going to be our rent, our mortgage, our car note, cell phone bill. That's going to be things like daycare as well as food. So it's all those things that it takes for you to be able to live on a monthly basis. Those are your living expenses or your operating expenses. So 60% should go towards that. You should be able to live off 60%. And so the last 10% should go towards what's called an emergency fund, or it should go towards debt repayment, debt payoff, or you can also put a portion of that last 10% towards the things that you enjoy. So if you want to take a trip, if you want to buy a bag, you want to buy something nice for yourself, then budget for it, plan for it. So again, this is the breakdown. If you have $1,000, okay, the first 10% and the first $100 is going to go towards tithes. Now, the next 20%, which is going to be $200 if you have $1,000, is going to go towards savings and investments. The next 60%, which would be $600 in this example, you would be able to live off of. And the last 10% is going to go towards your emergency fund. So your last $100 is going to be putting money aside for times of emergency, or a portion of that 10% can also go towards things like paying off debt, or it can go towards, hey, I want to take this vacation. So it's planning for the things that you also enjoy doing, living life, being able to splurge sometimes. You want to budget for those things as well. The fourth thing we want to keep in mind when it comes to managing our finances better and being greater stewards is that to create greater abundance, we have to become greater at giving. Giving him his tithe, but also giving of yourself, your time, along with your resources. In Proverbs 11:24, it says, "Give freely and become wealthy. Be stingy and lose everything." And in 2 Corinthians, it tells us, "Remember this, a farmer who plants only a few seeds will get a small crop, but the one who plants generously will get a generous crop. You must each decide in your heart how much to give, and don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure. For God loves a cheerful person who gives cheerfully, and God will generously provide all that you need. Then you will always have everything you need and plenty left over to share with others. For God is the one who provides seed for the farmer and then bread to eat. In the same way, he will provide and increase your resources and then produce a great harvest of generosity in you." So the more you give, the more you will receive. And giving opens doors. The more you bless others, in turn, the more you will be blessed. And number 5, you're blessed to be a blessing. And my mother used to always say this and instill this in me as a child. But at that time, I didn't fully understand what she was saying. But now I know that as I'm blessed, I'm not just blessed for my sake. When we're blessed, it's not just about us. We're blessed so that we, of course, He takes care of our needs and makes sure that we have enough, but then he will also give us overflow and abundance so that we can also help to bless someone else, so that we bring his name the glory. So as we continue to grow in our blessings, it's also our responsibility to continue to grow in being a blessing to someone else. In 2 Corinthians, it says, yes, you will be enriched in every way so that you can always be generous. And when we take your gifts to those who need them, they will thank God. So remember, this year is going to be our best year yet, because we're going to do the work and we're going to become better in managing our finances. We're going to better manage and steward what's in our hand. And as we continue to put him first, put our money, our resources, give those things to him, making sure that we're tithing consistently, God will continue to show up and to make a way and ensure that we have more than enough. And as we continue to grow in our blessings this year, remember that we are blessed to be a blessing. It's not just about us. It's about being able to take the things that he blesses us with and being able to use those things to not only bless ourselves and our families, but also being able to sow into other people and being the hands and feet of Jesus Christ here on earth and being a blessing to others so that they give him the glory. So, action items for today. Number 1, make a commitment to being a better manager and a better steward of your money, your resources, as well as the gifts that he's given to you that are already in your hand. If we master what's in our hand, that will create the opportunity for us to have even more. Number 2 is to be consistent in tithing. Number 3 is to create a budget. That's the first step. So when we talk about asking God for things and being persistent in asking, one of the things that he says is that it's his job to make sure that we are prepared. In order to be prepared, that means that sometimes we have to do more work to be ready. So if God gives you $1 million and $10 million, $100 million, $100,000, $10,000, whatever you need and whatever your breakthrough and your next level is, if you're mismanaging the $500 that you have now, then you're going to mismanage the $500,000 or the $500 million that he gives you. If you're not consistent in tithing with what he's presently giving you, then more than likely you're not going to be consistent in tithing more. So think about it like this. $1 million, 10% of $1 million is $100,000. If you have $1,000 and we're not consistent in tithing the $100 off the 1,000, then all of a sudden we're going to be more comfortable tithing $100,000 when we're struggling with 100. So make sure that we're growing and being consistent in our tithe. Number 3, I don't know if I already said this one or not, but number 3 is to create a budget. Number 4 is to review the budget on a consistent basis. So either weekly, semi-monthly, or once a month, but it has to be at least once a month. And also try to set aside a consistent date that you do so. So it may be the first Monday or the first Sunday of every month that you review it. So review the budget on a consistent basis. And number 5, just start where you are. So it doesn't matter how good or how bad your finances may be. And I know that when our bank account ain't really looking how we want it to look, we kind of shy away from actually doing a deep dive into our finances. We just push it aside. I don't really want to look at it because it can be depressing. But in order for us to make a change, in order for us to have a different result, and in order for us to position ourselves to be ready for our next level in our finances, we have to be willing to do the work. And even if your situation is good right now, and you're making a lot of money, or you have a lot of resources that are available to you, but if you don't have a budget and you don't have discipline in your finances, then your next dimension, how can you be trusted with more? So, no matter where you are in your journey of your finances, this year, make it a priority to be more disciplined in what He's already entrusted you with. When we manage what we already have, God always will give us even more. And if you've enjoyed this video, all I ask is two things. One, go ahead and press subscribe. And two, share this message with someone else.